I'm so excited to be sharing with you the brand new line of Altenew Mixed Media Inks. You're going to be stamping all of the things this summer. First, I just want to spend a minute talking about these brand new inks. There are two color lines, so there is the red Cosmos colors and the green field colors, and these do match the existing colors from the dye ink line of the Altenew Crisp Dye Inks. These happen to be a pigment ink though. They are a water-based pigment ink that when it is heat set, it becomes permanent. So you can use this on porous materials like paper, fabric, cork, anything that has pores in it that will allow the ink to soak in. And once you heat set it, it becomes permanent, meaning that if you use it on fabric, you can then wash the fabric and use it over and over again. So like adding this to a t-shirt, you can now stamp all the amazing Altenew stamps on fabric. That is so awesome. Okay, so today I'm going to show you two different projects. One is on cork and one is on a t-shirt. So the first project that came to mind to me was to create a cork trivet. So this is just a cork round that I got from IKEA like many moons ago, and it came natural. Now I wanted it to be white, so I painted this over with some white gesso that you can get from the craft store, and I have two layers on here to make it as white as I could. Now that this is on here, it is waterproof, so if this gets wet, it's not going to wipe off. And then once I add in my design, that will also be waterproof once I have it heat set. Of course, since this is cork, I can use an iron or I can use my heat tool to set the ink once I'm done. So the first thing I thought would be really wise was to make a template. So I just took a piece of white cardstock and my cork round and I put it on here and I traced it around in a circle. And then I picked out a good stamp set that I thought would be a lot of fun with this new ink, and this is the Watercolor Wonders stamp set. So I created this really cool template to go from, so that way when I'm stamping on here, I know what order I need to stamp things in and I have a really good idea of the layout. So that would be one of my biggest pieces of advice, is to definitely create a little template so that way you know exactly what you're going to be stamping before you get to your final project. And then now that I already have this template, I can save it and use it for other projects. Like I'm going to use the same template on my t-shirt later. Okay, so these do come in your 4 colors. So for the red Cosmos, of course, we have Frosty Pink, Coral Berry, Ruby Red, and Grapevine. And I'm going to always stamp them in order from lightest to darkest. I noticed here I tried to do lighter over darker and it didn't really turn out as well as I thought it was going to. So go from light to dark always with these. All right, so you'll see that it gets a nice thick layer of ink on here. These are really juiced up, which is great. And then I'm just going to stamp. Now be careful because it is slippery on the stamp, so you might slide a little bit, so be firm with your pressure and make sure that you're not twisting it or turning it, and you'll get a really great impression. All right, this is water soluble while it's wet, so you can just go ahead and wipe it off with a rag or any other stamp cleaner that you might normally use. All right, so this is my first color, and this was the Frosty Pink. And then the second layer I will do in Coral Berry. And I picked this stamp set because it's a very forgiving stamp set. You don't have to have all the pieces in just the right place for it to look good. It really does turn out no matter how you end up placing your pieces. So I wanted to use it more as an experiment to see how these layer on top of each other and what kind of look I'm going to get. So I'll go ahead and put my second layer on top. And notice that the bottom layer is not dry yet, but it doesn't matter. They layer over each other beautifully, and I still get a gorgeous impression even though that color underneath is not dry yet. It will dry just like this, and you're not going to get any bleeding or contamination. They just layer right on top of each other absolutely gorgeously. All right, so for my third layer on this one, I'm going to do this in Ruby Red. And again, it's the next darker color, so it's going to sit on top of the rest of this and look absolutely gorgeous and I don't need to be perfect about where it's placed. It's going to look fabulous no matter where I put it. All right, so there's my third layer. And then I'll do grapevine for the center on this one. And that is the darkest color. And it just looks so awesome on here. Okay, so that's my first flower done. And you can see that on some of my other ones, I started with the second color, which is coral berry. So I had coral berry and then ruby red and grapevine. Same thing with this one down here. And then I used the pink in the center. So that just gives you an idea of how you can mix and match some of your layering in order to get a little bit of visual interest. Okay, so I'm going to show you one of the leaves, and then I'll move it into some speed video so that way you can just enjoy the stamping process. Okay, so with the leaves, I have frayed leaf, forest glades, and evergreen, and then of course there is jet black. So if I was doing anything with outlines, jet black would be awesome. So let's do a couple of these leaves. So I'll start with frayed leaf and grab one of the leaf images. Another thing I like about this stamp set is that you can use some of the floral images as leaf images. They look just as nice. All right, so there is the frayed leaf. And then I'll do forest glades for the second color on this one. All right, so there is frayed leaf and forest glades. And then again, you can see that on some of the other ones, I did forest glades and evergreen to give me some darker leaves. And then in some instances, I just did the evergreen by itself and just to give it some real visual interest. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn on some music so you can watch the rest of this project come to life. So now you can see this finished project, and it is mostly dry at this point. However, it does still need to be heat set in order for that permanence to kick in. So because this is cork, I can use my iron on this. I'm just going to put another piece of fabric or a paper towel or something in between so that way I don't ruin my iron on accident. It shouldn't really come up on the iron at all, but this will just give me some extra protection, and I can just go ahead and heat set this with the iron, and that's going to make this permanent. And if it ever gets wet, the pattern won't come off of it. So let's take a look at a setup for a t-shirt. So this is just a plain white cotton t-shirt. It should work on any fabric as far as I know, as long as the fabric is porous, obviously. You shouldn't have a problem with it. So what I've done is I took a piece of cardboard and I put it up into the shirt. And this is doing two things for me. One, it's keeping the ink from bleeding onto the back side of the shirt. And it's also giving me a nice flat surface that I can smooth my fabric out against and stamp against. So that way I'm not trying to deal with unruly fabric as I do my stamping. So again, I'm going to use the same pattern and just kind of do a little design up here in the corner of the shirt. And it's the same process. So again, I'll start with my lightest shade, so the frosty pink, to get my big floral image on. And I should have the same results with this as I did with the cork. It may even look better because the surface, the weave is a little more tight than the cork weave was. So let's see what we get. Just go ahead and press firmly on here. Give it an extra second or two for the ink to really seep into the fabric. And then when you lift up, you get a beautiful image. once I was done with the t-shirt, I took this and the trivet upstairs and I went ahead and heat set both of them with the iron. I turned them on the highest setting that I could without steam heat. So just a nice hot iron to go ahead and press this out and press the trivet out. And I used it on the trivet instead of my heat tool just to make sure that I got an even distribution of heat and that every spot had been hit with heat, which sometimes you can't tell when you're using a handheld gun. So now that I've got that done, I'm going to go ahead and wring out some of this water from this paper towel that I have here, and look, you can see that it is going all over the place and it is not bleeding anywhere, and I'm able to clean it up and I don't have anything on my paper towel at all. So this is totally and completely heat set in place. It's not going to bleed or run. I can clean this off after a meal if it's gotten slopped on and not worry about losing this beautiful design. So the same thing with the t-shirt. I'll be able to go ahead and throw this in the wash and I won't have any problems with this coming off. Now over time it may fade just like any decal on a t-shirt would fade. I would recommend flipping your shirt inside out in order to preserve the color for as long as possible. So that's one tip for sure. And then the second tip is that when I did my pressing, I put this piece of paper towel over it and then ironed, and you can see that there is some residual ink. This would have gotten on my iron or may have actually stuck. So it's a really good idea to go ahead and cover whatever it is that you are ironing to make sure that any ink that transfers onto something like a paper towel instead of onto your iron. So there you go. 2 awesome ways that you can use the brand new mixed media inks from Altenew. And I know this is just going to take your crafting to the next level and you're going to enjoy your stamps all over again when you can stamp them onto all sorts of different projects and gifts. Thank you so much for stopping by today, and until next time, happy crafting. Help support my craft education efforts by clicking on the subscribe button and the little bell so you'll get notified when I create new content just for you. If you're looking for something else to watch, how about one of these crafty videos?